being stronger made me better, regardless of whether the training was 100% optimal. When I really started weight training and getting stronger, especially getting under heavy loads, so those fast twitch muscle fibers were really, getting that explosiveness, I started being able to do things in wrestling that I
into fitness. Today's guest, man, Austin Stout. He's a tremendously knowledgeable when it comes to bodybuilding, weightlifting, just functional health in general, nutrition. He's a wealth of knowledge. It's an honor to have him on the podcast. I know a lot of the followers, a lot of the people I work with every day share that passion for health and with the gym. So hopefully you're able to soak some of this amazing knowledge in and apply it to whatever your life holds on a daily basis. What do you weigh right now?
What do I weigh?
Yeah.
Probably, I haven't checked in a few days. I'm probably like mid 220s, 226. I don't know, something like that. I'm not too heavy. Pretty lean though. Yeah. I'm a very, very good shape at that weight currently.
It's all that good camel meat.
Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody's like, you need to start posting more of the food you eat. So I just kind of like made a little parody of it, we'll call it Austin's Spiritual Kitchen. It's funny though, because people are actually, they find it entertaining. So I'm like, whatever, we'll roll with it.
That's what, dude, I saw you posted. I was cracking up. I forget the one before that, but it was some gamey meat too.
Yeah, I did some, that we had some kangaroo. I had like some, lamb kidneys or something or other. So now we're just going for shock value at this point. Next thing I'm going to pull out some like, a shark or something.
When you put kangaroo on there, I was like, I wonder how bioavailable kangaroo meat is. Is that better? Does he know something I don't?
So actually I have some clients in Australia and it's as readily available as beef there. Like they eat tons of kangaroo meat. That's a really common meat for them.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
So you're based in Ohio, right?
Yeah, I am about 40 minutes from the Arnold Classic. That's like my point of reference because people will know where that's at.
Right, for sure. So I'm from Youngstown. Been down here in Texas now for about the past 10, 12 years. But where did everything start for you, man? Like, I know I read up on your website, you were a wrestler and then had gotten into the gym and then obviously bodybuilding and stuff like that. How did the journey take you there?
So it was really what attracted me to bodybuilding wasn't, I would want to say it's, the competitive aspect of it, which was a part of it, but I think it just kind of happened organically because when I was wrestling, of course, that's a weight controlled sport. So I wanted to figure out how I could better manage my weight, how I could better perform, all those things. And when I started digging into that information, it seemed like everything nutritionally was coming from bodybuilding outlets. I'm like, all right, well, these guys know something, so,
right.
And to be completely honest, that's really where a lot of my weight training started was for sport, but also I did train very, for better or for worse, I trained very kind of bodybuilding style. And like in hindsight, like there's probably some things I could have done differently since I was specifically training for wrestling,
Right.
but don't get me wrong, like being stronger made me better, regardless of whether the training was 100% optimal. When I really started weight training and getting stronger, especially getting under heavy loads, so those fast twitch muscle fibers were really, getting that explosiveness, I started being able to do things in wrestling that I shouldn't have been able to do.
Right.
Right? Like getting away with stuff that I shouldn't have positionally and grip strength and, things like that. So once I was done wrestling competitively, I had a scholarship to a very small, like I don't say small, a Division II college, so kind of middle of the road college for wrestling. I decided not to go there because it's a case where those, small to medium schools are atrociously expensive to go to, and they didn't really have the major that I wanted. So unfortunately, I didn't wrestle in college. but I did go to college for nutrition. And I was at that time, I was already doing some personal training on the side and doing my schooling, and then kind of starting to dabble in the nutrition side of things as far as people knew that I competed in bodybuilding. So they're like, hey, can you help me with my diet? I'm like,
Yeah.
sure. So that's, kind of how it went. And you got to remember, this is probably 2009, 2008. Like I'm like 18, 19 years old, and Instagram hadn't started yet.
Right.
So that's just that's just how people did things. We had forums, like I was on the forums, like RX Muscle and
Hmm.
probably like Professional Muscle a little bit. And then I started realizing, okay, well, there's this thing called word of mouth, and people are telling other people that I'm doing this, and I would get these emails coming in. Will you help me with my nutrition? I'm like, sure. So it probably wasn't until people were starting to pay me around that 19-year-old range, but it probably wasn't till I was about 21, I would say, where I'm like, I think I could probably just do this exclusively.
Right.
Now, at that point, I didn't have anything to lose. Like I was a broke kid. I had a roommate who was a bodybuilder. He was one of my very first competitor clients at the time. So we were roommates. He was actually like the very first person I had ever win a show. So of course that helped propel me a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And I had linked up with another team at the time early on. We had a few of us coaches, mostly younger people, and we started to kind of make a name for ourselves. So that helped propel me a little bit more forward. Um, and then by 20, I want to say I was probably around 22 or 23. I was I wasn't part of the team anymore. I was completely back to being on my own, you know, full time job. Like my full time thing was coaching. I had no more personal training income. I had no more like summer side job income, nothing like that. And I was finishing up school around that time. It got pretty bad there for a while. I mean, I was full time school, full time class load, full time trying to do my online thing, uh, trying to still work at the gym. There was a pretty dark period of time there where, like, man, I was like, I don't know if I can survive this,
Right.
And of course, like a dumbass kid, I'm still trying to bodybuild.
Hmm.
Well, because why not?
Yeah.
And I actually, I think it was the end of 2011. I was prepping for a show, and I actually ended up. I've told this story before in different capacities, but I actually ended up in the emergency room because they say that the technical diagnosis there was I had a TIA, which is a basically a mini stroke.
Really.
So now the similarities between a TIA, and I'm not going to claim to be, I'm not a cardiologist. I mean, I know a good amount about cardiology, but the from the way I understand it, the difference is kind of it presents a lot of the same like loss of motor skills, having difficulty with speech, kind of like temporary paralysis to an extent in certain ways, but normally not any long-term residual side effects from it.
Okay.
Right. It was more so stress induced. Now I do have this twitch in my left eye, which I always joke that is from that. I don't
Right.
know. So, but I also like, dude, I also raced motocross as a kid growing up from 8 years old all the way up into my early 20s. This was before concussion protocol, like
Hmm.
before anyone gave a shit about concussions. I mean, I probably had 12 to 15 concussions.
Wow.
So now,
Then.
knock on wood, I have not had one in a long time.
Right.
But there was a summer there where I had to stop. I had to stop. Like my dad's like, you know what, we're not gonna ride anymore this summer because we were pretty deep into it. But I'd had like two or three concussions within like a 4 month span, and you were like, I've had CAT scans done on my brain, like I've been checked out.
Right.
but but long story short, I kind of got through that phase, finally finished school, which was helpful because that took some time off my plate. And then I was able to continue to excel in that coaching. And from there, it just, I don't, I wish I could say it was like an exciting story. I didn't blow up. I've never blown up. That's never been a thing. I've never been an overnight success. Not even, the mentorship program now with all the coaches I educate, like that was slow. My coaching business was slow. Everything was slow. I was never, no IFBB pros showed up on my doorstep and I couldn't attach myself to anyone and propel me into greatness. Like nothing like that ever happened.
Right.
It was just grind, 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 referrals, try to treat people the best I can, bend over backwards for people, probably to a fault sometimes.
We're we're
And
we're from Ohio, bro.
eventually,
That's the only way we get it.
yep,
But
yep. I come from a family of like my dad's a business owner. He owns an automotive repair business that's very successful. He bought that from my grandfather. My grandfather was, you know, army, opened his own business, farming, some light farming.
yeah,
My dad flips houses, rental properties, automotive business, just grinds, and
grind.
that's the only thing that I knew was treat people as good as I could and work harder than everyone else.
Love it,
That's all. That's all I knew how to
dude.
do.
Absolutely, man. Growing up in Youngstown, my stepfather's a steel worker. My mother was a teacher. I went right out of high school and got into the military. Unfortunately, growing up in Ohio, I didn't realize what a mecca Ohio is when it comes to bodybuilding. And like, for whatever reason, football's huge in Ohio, wrestling's huge in Ohio. I chose basketball for whatever reason, which was
Okay.
not
Probably like the worst Ohio sport.
right.
But
And neglected the fact that I was white and couldn't jump either. And so I ended up going over and playing in Pennsylvania. But man, I lost my way after the military. Got in a lot of trouble, had addiction issues, and lost my way for a long time. And then when I came out of it, I got into running, and quickly the addict mentality took over, and I got into ultra running. So I was running 100 Ks, 100 miler, and that's kind of the I had tried to address all these areas in my life as far as addiction and mental health, PTSD, everything I was diagnosed with. And the physical piece wasn't something I had thought about addressing. I was trying to address mental health. I was trying to address spiritual health. And when I started running, that put the pieces of the puzzle together for me. Unfortunately, what happened is I ended up becoming kind of good at the running. And so I started placing in races, and I won a marathon and started winning races. And so it put all this added pressure on this outlet I had now, because now I could go run 100K. And if I didn't win or place, now I feel like I failed, even though I just ran 62 miles on crazy terrain and the heat of Texas. I wasn't satisfied. And so I'd realized looking back that I had become, I love the outcome of the running. I didn't necessarily love the process. Running 90, 100 miles a week in Texas heat was not what I really enjoyed. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up kind of segueing into the gym. And the gym and weights, man, it became this thing in my life where, I never really had aspirations to do a bodybuilding show, but it was something where I fell in love with the process, the grind of going into the gym every day, day in and day out. And it became the first topic in my life where, bro, school was not for me. If they were trying to teach me something I wasn't interested in, I was not retaining it or even trying. But when I got, in touch with bodybuilding and weights in the gym, I couldn't get enough books. I couldn't watch enough videos online. I couldn't read enough studies or anything like that. And it has become this fountain in my life where I can't get enough information. And so one of my previous guests, Amanda, she was on here, and I saw you had commented on the episode, and I started looking at your stuff, man, and I love what you're doing. You have a strong focus on education, and it's such a, unfortunately, education aspect is such a contrast now from this social media world. And you see influencers doing crazy
yeah,
exercises just for content, and then I see
yep,
people replicating it in the gym, and it I understand everybody's on their own journey and they're going to find their way, but it drives me a little nuts seeing that kind of stuff. So where for you, why is it so important? Why is the educational piece so important for you?
man, you bring up a great point, and this is the battle. This is, at first when I started getting heavier into education, or at least publicly, like putting more stuff out. I always kind of thought I just saw a need for it. For one, like there was a need, so there was a gap that I could fill. So that's how it started. And but over time, social media gave everyone a voice for
Mm-hmm.
better and for worse, right?
Right.
So now, now shock value, like everything's shock value. The louder, the more sensationalistic, the more absolute that it is, the more aggressive that it is. Unfortunately, people naturally gravitate towards that stuff. And they also, not only that, but it's very confusing to the
Mm-hmm.
consumer. So I get it. Like I try to sympathize and empathize with people also, and understand that when they come into this space, who do you believe?
Mm-hmm.
How do you pick and choose who you follow? All these things, and it's easy to get wrapped up in that. So over time, my message has really kind of honed in more on this idea of being logical and sensible and trying to detach emotion from what we're learning and what we're doing, and understanding, like really looking at things from a whole simplistic view of, this is how these things work. This is how we can apply these things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take those two kind of like those, two values, if you will, and put them together, people have a better experience in the sense that they don't get sucked into as many scams. They don't, they're not getting taken advantage of by people as much. So really my education has been based around that. Yes, I mean I'm of course biased. I think it's some of the best education that anyone can receive in the industry, but also what I'm really trying to do, and I tell coaches this because I when I mentor a lot of coaches, they of course come in. I want to know about your program, what makes you different, what's like, why is this different? And I really tell people that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to teach you how to think
Mm-hmm.
properly. Okay. And when I say that, what I mean is I'm trying to teach you how to work through situations with detaching that emotional aspect, but also while understanding the emotional needs of the client at the same time, because there's a human element to all this. There's a psychological element to all this. So you have to understand that stuff. But if you don't know how to think properly, you can't teach the client how to think properly,
Yeah.
right? So I think that there are probably a lot of sensationalistic type people that honestly just don't know how to think themselves.
Yeah.
So it's probably not intentional, man. I think that a lot of people probably see other people and they try to emulate these things. It's like,
Mm.
well, this is what's going on. This is what gets the views. This is what gets the hits. I'm going to do that. That must be it. These people have a lot of followers. And so they just try to emulate it. And what a lot of people find, and this is more on the business side of it, what a lot of people find is that they end up being pretty dissatisfied in the types of people that they're attracting.
Mm-hmm.
One, because for the people that are going to gravitate towards that stuff may not be a very good they may not be the kind of client that you want to work with.
Right.
um, yeah, I could, if you have enough voice, I could probably make up something on the internet and probably get enough people to believe it and bring them in. But what's the like what kind of retention rate am I going to have, and what kind
Right.
of it's like people don't take that stuff into consideration. So my education is all based around just trying to teach people how to think, and trying to teach people how to work with human beings on a real, on a personal level.
Right. Dude, I got very lucky when I first started researching all this, and I stumbled upon. Luckily, the first person I stumbled upon was John Meadows,
There
and
you go.
so
Yeah.
he always did such a good job of still being entertaining, but the education that he brought, and so that's what sucked me in. And so now I work with clients every day, and I work with people primarily in the drug and alcohol recovery world. And so what I'm trying to do is basically apply what's made such a difference in my life and give them a piece of that. And so I'm sure I get a lot of the same questions you do from new clients, but you're kind of playing a game, because these are people that have taken their lives to extremes with drugs and alcohol. And so a lot of the things I get first off is like, man, I got low T, I need to get on test, I need to get on trend, I need to do this. And my main goal with them is trying to get them to understand like none of that matters if you don't know how to train, if you don't have good form, if you're not recovering, if you don't know how to eat, like all these things. And so what I try to get them to understand is, you know, they see these people online and on social media. And what I'm trying to get them to see is most of these people, not all obviously, but most of these people have trained for years and gotten every ounce of muscle they can out of their body until their body just says, we're not putting any more on. Then they introduce those hormones or whatever into their life, and just trying to get them to slow down. Because, you know, I put a really strong emphasis when I started. The thing that kept me away from the gym for the longest time was the fact I didn't want to go in there and feel like I looked stupid. I didn't want people to know I didn't know what I was doing. Luckily, I had my heart broke, and that was what nudged me into the gym and would create, you know, me as a person in the gym. And so just getting them to understand and get them to do the basics. Do you find a lot of that stuff with the people that are coming to you, or are these people that are a little bit more advanced and ready to dive in?
I get a lot of both. I definitely get a lot of newer kind of what we would call lifestyle, general population clients, and as well as advanced people. Uh, you know, to your point, a lot of things you see online lack context,
Mm-hmm.
right? They really lack context, and so that can be misleading, and also you don't always know. People aren't fully transparent a lot of the time. You don't always know what's going on behind closed doors and what they may be struggling with, or what's really going on. And that's also why you see a lot of those people, they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
you know it's like
Or they're,
they're
or
not there for that long.
right.
i think
Go
I
ahead.
think seeing the shelf life of a coach and shelf life of a competitor, everyone has to start somewhere. So you don't have a lot of social proof if you're only in a year. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you've seen someone that's been in the industry for 10 years or 15 years, and they're continually successful and they're continually have a good reputation, people speak highly of them. They don't have a lot of skeletons going on,
Mm-hmm.
I think that speaks I think that speaks volumes for them. That's a testament to them being having a good foundation, good morals, good values, uh, and providing something meaningful. But like I said, I get a lot of people on both ends, and there's difficulties on both sides of that. From on the more of the general population or lifestyle or newer people, novices, they do struggle coming in because, again, information overload. They're having a difficult time figuring out what's right, what's not, not only that, but what's right for them
Yeah.
personally. It's not, because a lot of things can be right and a lot of things can be wrong. Again, it's all context. There's a time and a place for most things. So those, I think, just helping people understand on a real basic level what that foundation is. Like you said, like, these are the things that you have to apply right now before we can scale you up to this next step,
Yep.
and understand that all these people that you're watching have already done those things.
Yeah.
They've been doing them for years or decades in some cases. Now, on the other side of it, on the more advanced side, the difficulty there is they're stuck in their ways. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They come in with a lot of preconceived bias. So that preconceived bias could be from either they have done things themselves for a really long time. And if you've done things for yourself, maybe you've done the same kind of stuff often. So if I come in and just flip them on their head,
Mm-hmm.
that can be a lot to digest, can be very scary. Change is hard, right? Change is
Yeah.
difficult. Or they've worked with a lot of coaches before and they have a lot of preconceived notions as to how the coaching process might work, or what it might look like, or what you should do. So if I'm doing something that's drastically different, that can be a shock for
Yeah.
people. So, you know, a lot of my conversations now with people at the beginning kind of revolve around those topics. They're like, man, in order for me to help you, we almost have to do like factory reset here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't want you to play dumb. I value your feedback. Your feedback's important to me, especially if you're advanced. Like, things that I don't know, because you've operated in your body for a long time, but also you can't you can't necessarily come in and just want me to do things exactly how you want them done, because you're not coachable at
Right.
that point. A lot of the people that are more advanced are difficult from a coachability standpoint because of all those past experiences. And what I try to really illustrate to them is, you came to me, why? Because you followed me online, or someone referred you, or what you're doing isn't working anymore, or whatever it is. So you sought me out because you need help advancing to the next step. So understand that this change is going to require change,
Yeah.
literally, right? And that's for anything, right? I've gone through that stuff myself with my business. Like, there's been a lot of, even in the last year, I've undergone a lot of changes in terms of, emotionally and psychologically, and trying to like do some things and try some stuff that I was really afraid to try because I'm a little conservative. My risk tolerance
Right.
is a little bit low when it comes to business and things.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to really buy into that process. And as long as you trust the person, that's the first thing. As long as they trust me, I'm not gonna, I would never do anything intentionally to give you worse results, because that would be a really bad business model, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
It's like, if you can understand that, we'll be fine.
Right. A lot of the people I work with, it'll be in group settings, maybe at a treatment center or something like that, and I inevitably get the guy that he lifted hard in high school and he played football, or they come up and they're, man, I used to be jacked just like you, or and say all these things, and they're obviously not high level people, but coming in with those preconceived notions, and like I say to them all the time, like, guys, I do this day in and day out. I live, eat, and breathe this, and I still learn every single day. I still am trying to get more information. The only reason that got me into being a personal trainer was I just wanted to learn things better myself. Then when I started training people, it helped me so much in my training, being able to understand, seeing other people move, and being like, oh man, I think I might do that. Maybe I need to tuck my elbow in. So it just made me a better person in the gym and all that. But trying to get them to understand, it's like, man, this is number one, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you really want to adopt this type of lifestyle and it be sustainable in your life, we need to slow down first of all, but also being willing to take feedback, because, I'll be the first one to say that I'm constantly trying to learn from people. I constantly want to surround myself with people that are smarter, bigger, everything of the sort, just so to see how I can soak up whatever I can. In your journey as a coach, I have to imagine you've seen some pretty impactful stories, taking these people from what they come in as to what, stepping on stage, winning a show, or just overall the difference it's made in our life. Can you I'm not asking you to name names, but do you have any of those stories that stick out? Because I know I have those clients where I look and I'm like, him right there or her right there, this is why I do what I do.
There's Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of instances I could think of. And I've been around long enough now to realize that, to me, one of the coolest things is really that long-term impact. So getting on stage, winning a show, becoming an IFBB pro, like something like, dude, that can be a goal that they've been working for their entire adult life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's huge. And that it's a big moment, but there's always going to be another moment
Yeah.
later, you know. But I think something really cool that I've come to really enjoy now, especially since I've been around long enough, is getting those, like getting those referrals from people that worked with me 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, say, hey, so and so referred me, and I'm trying to think, who was that? And I was like,
Right.
oh, and I look back, I'm like, man, I worked with them in 2014 or 13 or
Right.
whatever it was. And I think what's cool about that too is, I mean, I've grown leaps and bounds since then. I was just a kid,
Mm-hmm.
realistically. They trusted me then. So I made enough of an impact as a 23-year-old kid for these people to refer me clients 10 years later. And so I think that's really cool. Or you know, when I talk about like transformations with people, I always say I want to know what happens after the after. Like we've
Mm,
got a before and after. What's after the after? Is it, do we sustain these results? Did it make a long-term impact on their lifestyle permanently forever? Like is did I have that kind of impact on someone? Because that to me is much greater than this visual of, this like side by side visual of from here to here. Especially with like the types of people you're working with, right? Because these are a lot of lifestyle clients, and it is a lifestyle.
yeah,
Are we fostering an environment that is going to fostering an environment, a thought process, and habits that are going to stick with them long term?
right.
In the lifestyle realm, and there's like literal science, research and literature on this. If we look at the statistics on weight loss, the statistics on weight loss kind of show us that a lot of people over the course of their lifetime are successful losing weight, but the statistics on weight loss retention are atrociously bad. You
Really?
know, they're horrible. And we can even take that a step further and look at the amount of dieting attempts that somebody makes, in their lifetime is pretty high. And what we find is that each time that they restart, they're kind of heavier or fatter or worse or less health. Their health is worse like each time. And that's because, they're following these fad diets or poor advice or something's really extreme and they never establish those habits. So from the lifestyle side, like those are the walls and barriers that we have to break down to really actually make a true impact on someone long term.
Right.
Now, on the bodybuilding side of it, it's similar in the sense that bodybuilders are short-sighted just like everybody else. You know, they have the goal and they want the goal now. Um, but of course, they're going to want something else after they attain the goal. So we have to have foresight in the way that we approach every situation and make sure that we're still set up to continue to succeed over and over and over and over, whether that's maintaining their health or fixing things when they're broken, because bodybuilding is extreme.
Yeah.
And being able to continue to make that progress. And at some point, they're not going to be competing anymore,
Hmm.
you know. And I've been lucky enough to work with some masters competitors and older people that are at that point. Like, I want you to prep me for my last show, and then I want you to help me transition over into my life after bodybuilding. It's like, dude, that's a big thing when someone's been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
So those are pretty, I would say, for me, experiences like that are super impactful.
Hmm. The You were talking about nutrition and everything. What I usually try, I know what I'm not sure where I heard it, but it sank in, and it's what I try to always relay to my clients, and it's just making small lasting changes, because people will come to me and I give up sugar completely. I'm doing this. I'm doing this, and I was like, man, it sounds great, but that's like saying like, all right, we're just giving up. Today I'm just not a heroin addict anymore. Like that's not likely to happen. And so
Right.
I always use the reference with my coffee. That's literally where I started. I was literally sitting in treatment. I had started getting into running, and my diet wasn't good, anything like that. But I used to put so much cream and sugar in my coffee that the spoon would stand straight up. And so I tell them, like, at first I started, from now on, no sugar in the coffee. I'll just do cream. And it sucked at first. I didn't like it. 2-3 weeks went by. I got used to it, and it was like, all right, now I'll take the creamer out. And so now it's black coffee. Didn't like it. A couple of weeks later, I got used to it. Now, I'm on the rare occasion I accidentally grab my wife's coffee and take a sip of hers. I'm like, ugh, what is this
Yeah.
sugary filled stuff? But trying to get them to understand that, where it's like you can't go from 0 to 100 all the time, like small lasting changes, and still being able to have those things so it's sustainable and not this crash diet or trying to get crash results.
Yep. And that applies to everyone across the board, bodybuilding, even the most serious competitor. There's you have to consider sustainability even with extreme goals. You have to
Mm-hmm.
consider that, because I can't say that I've ever prepped someone that's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this show at all costs, and then to hell with it after that. I'll
Yeah.
just go, I'll just go and ruin everything. Like that's never the intention with
Yeah.
anyone. So we definitely have to set people up to succeed in the long term. And the clients lack foresight, but there's also coaches, and I don't want to say that the coaches lack foresight necessarily. I think that what happens is I think that a lot of people in the coaching industry fear that if they don't give the client exactly what they want right now, that they'll leave
Mm,
and that they'll lose their clients and that they'll lose their money and they're not going to be successful in their business.
right.
And I think a lot of the fear comes from that. A lot of the fear comes from having those conversations with people that, man, I really don't want to lose a client. I'm just going to have to do what they want me to do.
Yeah.
And, and you know what? I, I would be lying if I said there hasn't been a few instances of that over the years where people are like, "Hey, screw you, I'll go pay someone else that'll give me what I want." I'm like, "All right." A lot of the time they come back though. A lot of the time they come back later, and then when they come back, I'm like, "Well, ball's in my court now," you know.
Right.
So, but people will people will respect you on a different level if you're on it. If you're honest with them, as long as they trust you. If it comes from a place of trust and it comes from a place of caring, those conversations work,
Right.
right? But you have to have those two things first, right? It's like in a relationship. Like if you have a new relationship, there's probably some things that you're not going to say to your girlfriend right off the bat that the criticism might be a little bit abrasive,
Yeah.
but as you get to know each other and you form that trust and form that bond, you can start to you can start to have those harder conversations because you realize that you want to be with that person forever,
Right.
essentially. So you can do those things. No different with the clients, man. Like once we get that rapport, establish that rapport, uh, I kind of and I've like I said, I've been around long enough to where I think people are already seeking me out. They already trust me to a large extent.
Right.
But even then, there's a lot of initial conversations with new clients coming in that I really don't like having, man. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't. It's one of my least favorite things when I have to just say, hey, I see all of these obstacles, all these things that you've continued to do, and this is why you're here, essentially. And it's not my favorite thing to do, but I never regret just being honest with people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And as a coach, you got to be, if you truly care for your clients, you got to be like that with them. I know two of the biggest things I see when people are coming in and I watch the light go off. They're starting to get some results, and so they're adopting the lifestyle, and the gym's going to be a thing in their life. Two of the biggest things that I always see with the people I work with is number one, they immediately run out and spend a fortune on every supplement known to man that they think they need, and then oftentimes they're all, I'll ask them what's your goals, and they're like, oh, I want to lose a little bit of weight. I want to gain some muscle in that. And then I see them trying to go for 1 rep maxes and, the form's not even there yet, and try to explain to them that they're going to hurt themselves. In your world, what are some of the things you see like that as a client's coming in to work with you?
So the way that I kind of illustrate this is it's like if you're a someone that has a business, we have this term, it's called scaling, right?
Mm,
To scale your business to the next step. We do the same thing with clients. So for example, if someone's brand new, if we just eat protein with every meal, we're going to get a certain amount of result from that, probably. That's great. We'll start there. But if you want that next result, I'm going to scale up. I'm going to expect a little bit more from you, and you have to expect a little bit more from yourself, and we'll scale together. But to your point, you're 100% right. People they they want what they want right now, and they don't want to deal with any of the steps in between. And I kind of illustrate it like this. If I had if I had a graph that had two lines on it, let's say like the graph cuts off over here. So you can't see anything past this part. My line, this is the line that where we are establishing the fundamentals, right?
mm-hmm.
This line's a little bit, it's linear, but it's not as fast. But when I get past this part, this line keeps going.
Yeah.
right? Because we keep getting results. But if I presented them with this other line that goes like this, but what they don't know is after they get here, this line falls off and they fall off a cliff and to their death on the other side.
Right.
But if I didn't show them that wall, if I didn't show them that wall, people are going to pick the steeper line every time,
Yeah.
right? So it's our job as a coach to kind of illustrate that. And one of the ways that I do that is I ask a lot of questions to people, right? Because it is an emotional response a lot of times. So what I want them to do is I want them to kind of say things back to me. So for example, I might say, let's say it is the person that's really struggling with the process being a little bit longer than they would like and having to do all these like kind of minuscule things. I'll say, hey, where do you want to be a year from now? They're like, I want to lose, I want to lose 25 pounds. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you want to do after you lose 25 pounds? Like, well, I would like to, maintain that weight loss. Or maybe they don't even know. Maybe they haven't even thought that far.
Right.
They're like, I don't know. I've never even thought about it, which is also very possible,
Mm-hmm.
and or they're like, well, maybe I'd like to if I guess if I lose that weight, I would maybe want to, be a bodybuilder, or maybe I'd want to like, get into some kind of sport. Maybe I would want to do jujitsu, or maybe I'd want to run or something. I said, okay, well, you realize that if I just crash diet you and damage your body, we can lose the 25, but you're not going to be able to do any of those other things.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to lose weight for my wedding and I want to look like this for my wedding. I was like, no, no, no. This is what you want to look like all the time. Am I
Yeah.
correct? I said, I can guarantee that you probably don't just want to lose weight for your wedding and then go back to where you were at again. They're like, well, I guess not. I said, yeah. So with that being said, let's think about our long-term approach here, because is it possible to forecast everything for 10 years? No, it's not, because you're going to have environmental obstacles that are going to pop into there that are unforeseen,
Mm-hmm.
you know but you surely don't want to shoot yourself in the foot on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's tough, man. It's really tough to have that kind of foresight.
Right. When it comes to the training, there's like the principles for building muscle. You got load, mind muscle connection, all that stuff. Like where do you rank that stuff as importance? Because for a long time, I got I got infatuated with mind muscle connection. I just needed to connect with every rep of everything, and I didn't really put much focus. I wasn't putting focus on load, and so it's like this for me. It's just trying to find the balance of which is more optimal, what's better, or deciding like, all right, I'm going to go into this training block. Is it going to be higher reps, or is it going to be lower reps and heavier load? Like, where do you kind of rank that stuff?
So we there are a lot of different camps on training. A lot of people that are really diehard in, that are going to be diehard and like do only low volume. It's all about load, got to progress load at all costs. Or you'll have the camp that they're they're totally fixated on, they're so fixated on biomechanics that they never progress load,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, oh, that was slightly off. I got to rotate my hip 1 centimeter. Can't do anything else. And so both of those camps can make progress up to a point, of course, because when you're new, anything works.
Yep.
Like if you're just consistent with it, anything's going to work. But as you progress, things get harder, right? As you progress, you start to see more of, which areas on your body are weak, which muscles are weak, which muscles are overdeveloping, where our structural imbalances are at. And, those things start to become more and more glaring later on. And so there's a few things that we have to think about. Connect, activation or connection with the tissue is always number one. If you can't train a muscle effectively, then it's not going to grow, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that if your pecs are weak, if you have very weak pecs and all of your pressing movements you're feeling, predominantly in your anterior delt and your triceps, well, your pecs aren't probably going to grow very well.
Right.
So that's more of a biomechanical issue. So at first, yes, we have to be able to do exercises that fit us mechanically. So don't be married to a movement,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you are if you're built really weird and your femurs are super long and you feel super awkward and shitty in barbell squats, like there's probably, you know what I mean? Like if building muscle is your goal, there's probably another exercise that's going to allow you to really lock in and focus on that target tissue better.
Yeah.
So don't worry about, especially for bodybuilding and muscle growth or anything cosmetic, don't worry about the movements that you're doing. Worry about the movements that work for you, right?
Yeah.
Yes, a beginner, everything's going to work. Could a beginner just like squat, deadlift, and bench press and do like some curls and, rope extensions for their arms and grow? Probably 100%.
Right.
But over time, as you get stronger, you're going to have to fine tune your exercise selection. You're going to have to start to, care about those things a little bit more. And you see that you've seen that in throughout history, whether it was intentional or instinctual. Sometimes people see, well, I've seen such and such pro bodybuilder does a lot of machines. I'm like, okay, well, think about this for a second. One, that person has a ton of muscle. So do you know how much energy it takes for them to unrack a bar and get into position and do like an RDL for their hamstrings?
Yeah.
Dude, they're smoked by the time they unrack that 5 or 6 plates and shake to death and get back in position and do their reps.
Mm-hmm.
When rather they could lock themselves into a movement that's braced and really drive all attention to that muscle and get a lot more effective reps. So, like, if I took somebody, even a beginner, you're like, well, I've been squatting a lot, but I can't feel anything in my legs. You know what I mean? Like my back's tight or my knees hurt, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, one, their form might be poor, but two, if I took that individual and I put them in a leg extension for their quads. And I made everything tight. That lap bar is tight. I got their legs are locked in. We're doing everything right. Toe position's good. And I, ran them through a super hard set, hard contractions, maybe a few force reps, really made them squeeze that muscle. What are they going to feel more?
Yeah.
Now, am I saying that you should, solely do single joint movements and all isolation movements? Absolutely not. But the problem is that you have to be able to actually train the correct tissues effectively. You can't just squat for your legs if you don't feel it in the right places, you're not going to grow the muscles effectively.
Right.
That's kind of what it boils down to. So once
Yeah.
we have that established, now we can start to get into some nuance. We can start to figure out what your weaknesses are. Maybe we need to train your arms, your biceps a little bit more during the course of a week. Maybe we need to train your quads 2 or 3 times in a week. We can start to figure those things out. And we can start to get some kind of progression scale. Training's all progression, right? Progression could be volume, progression could be load, right? Progression could even just be tension where you're doing the reps better,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Like I can get in a movement, and if I start to fatigue, I can kind of like unconsciously I start to adjust my form a little bit to let other muscles pick up the slack. And I can stand at the top of that squat for 10 seconds and take like 5 more breaths and do 2 more reps. I'm like, but I can do that shit all day long.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean that we're getting any more tension. So um, being able to maintain tension throughout the sets is going to be super important. But there's a lot of ways to progress, man. I've had success with myself doing the lower volume, just purely strength progression type stuff. I've done higher volume. Um, a lot of it for me just boils down to that person's recovery ability, and recovery is recovery is really two things: genetics, like, of course, like your nutrition and stuff.
Yep.
But a lot of like, recovery boils down to your environment. I can't give, if I have the business owner, well, or let's say I have like the single mom that has 3 kids that's running around like a maniac all day. I can't give her as much volume as I give the dude that like sits at his desk and has no stress all day.
Yeah.
You know, that mom has that mom's got like 3 days of hard training in the tank, and that's it.
Yep.
That's all she's got.
Right.
So we have to understand those environmental variables as well.
For sure. I remember, dude, it used to drive me crazy when I was dove headfirst into the lifting, bodybuilding, training, and all that. I could not connect with my chest to save my life for at least the first year and a half. But I had the strongest front delts in the game though. Um, and
Yeah.
then I remember like I used to think dumbbell flies was a trash exercise. I couldn't connect with them. And then now years later, I started doing a program and that had them in there. And now it's one of my favorite exercises that I connect with best. And so it's so cool to go on this journey and remember when I first started and it was like, damn, man, I used to not be able to feel my chest for shit. Or I connected with my left lat a year before I connected with my right lat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you start doing an exercise and the first rep of the exercise, I feel it. And so it's so cool for that to happen and then to be able to use that experience and help other people. But dude, I would go around and do chest. I would be in the gym for no bullshit, 2.5, 3 hours with my buddy, just doing all chest stuff. And
Just
then wondering why my chest won't grow. But then understanding that I needed to lighten the load a little bit. I needed to take the volume down. Then all of a sudden it started growing. And so it's just fascinating, man. It's fascinating how each person's different, training's different. You could look at Branch Warren online and you see these heavy partials all the time, or you see somebody else with amazing form and it's, full or the doctor, oh man, I can't remember his name. Dr. Full Rom.
Dr. Mike.
Yeah, Dr. Mike. I was just watching something on him
Stark
recently.
contrast between him and Branch for sure.
Right, right. But then they're both big. They both look like they know what they're doing, and so it's like being able to see what does that do for, type of style of training do for me? Who do I identify with? Who do I trust to follow? All those different things.
Yep. There's and two, I think when you become more advanced, there's like if you took someone like Branch, that's an extreme example, right? Like if you look at Branch, you watch a video, the only thing you're gonna see is this dude's just throwing weights around,
Right,
right? However, I'd be willing to bet, and I never lived in Branch's body, so I don't know what he felt when he trained, but I would be willing to bet that as sloppy as it might look, he was feeling everything that he was doing still, right? Because I know now the interesting thing now, especially with competing a lot, because with competing, of course, you're posing and like, I can stand here and flex every single individual muscle just standing.
right,
Most people off the street, if I'm like, hey, flex your hamstring, yeah, I don't they can't, right?
right.
They
Yeah,
can't do it. So they can't feel that stuff. I could really realistically, I could probably go into the gym with super sloppy form and I could still feel everything that I'm doing.
right.
Am I suggesting that or condoning that? No, but yeah, as you become more advanced and that neural connection's really strong, you can move in a lot of different ways and you have good connectivity with the muscles. But new people, man, they do need to learn mechanics. They need to basically, it's like a baby deer, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the kid, like the guy that goes through puberty, and he grows 6 inches in one summer and he's super awkward and gangly and he can't. He's like, I've trained with some of those young guys and they're like doing their dumbbell presses. I'm like,
Yeah,
dude, you've got the strength. This weight is so easy for you, but it's like going over here and up here and all over the place. I said, you have zero control
yeah.
of your muscle. You have it, you just don't have any control over it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of new people, of course, have to really establish that stuff first, for
Right.
sure.
Who would you say, let's say someone listening to this podcast, they're new, they're getting into the gym and stuff like that. Obviously, number one, they should look you up for sure for good education and information. But who do you think some of the other people out here in the industry are good places to start?
So, man, I think too, I like to ask people too, like, how do you learn best? Are you visual or do you like to read? Do you like books? What kind of stuff do you like?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are good resources uh, in all those kind of different areas. Most of what I put out a fair amount of basic stuff and I work with a lot of basic people, but also I'm also appealing to a lot more coaches and advanced individuals as well. So some of the stuff that you're going to see on my page is going to like go over people's heads.
Yeah,
I try to explain things very simply. I think I do a good job at that.
you do.
But still, if you don't have basic terminology, at least it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to go really basic, you can even, you know, especially if you're interested in bodybuilding, like there's some good books out there. Like Dr. Scott Stevenson has a Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach. That's a pretty cool book. Kind of, I think it's pretty easy to follow, you know, real easy to keep up with. There's some good contest prep books out there, good fat loss books like Cliff Wilson, and I think Peter Fitchen's his name. Peter was a training client of mine. He has a PhD, smart guy. Cliff's a really good bodybuilding coach, contest prep coach. They have a contest prep book, you know, very easily digestible. You can apply that to fat loss very easily. You know, so there's, if you're more interested in hormones and things like that, watch my stuff, you know. Yeah. But there's, I think that there's, I would say this, I would say rather than who exactly you should follow, I think that it's more of a what things should you look at when you're picking someone to follow?
Right.
Because I think that's where people get into trouble,
Yeah.
right? Like you should be careful with people that use words like always or never,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or people use words like best or worst, right? Like there's again lack of context. So if you're seeing people that are very loud and they're just using things like this is the best, this is the worst, this is the way, the only way to do something, I would I'd be weary of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would
Yeah.
be weary of that. um but I would also encourage people to get a basic grasp on physiology and a basic grasp on um, nutrition, in the sense that what is a protein, what is a carb, what are macros, what is, you know, what are calories, what's hydration, what are electrolytes, like real basic. Because I think if you have a basic idea of how things work, you can spot bullshit then,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because you're like, oh well, that seems a bit extreme, I feel like they're leaving some stuff out or they're being a little biased. You can get an idea of who's maybe more biased or more marketing, more scamming going on there. But if you don't, then you're gonna, you know, you're gonna probably just be attracted to whoever shows up in your algorithm the most at that
Right.
point.
That's yeah. I feel very lucky that I when I stumbled upon Mountain Dog stuff, John Meadows, because like he never gave those absolutes. It was always like love this exercise. It works well for me. You know, it was general terms, but you could tell what what worked for him and what he had gotten results with, as opposed to somebody's video or something I would read where they're saying like the only way to build a big back is to deadlift and you got to do this or you got to be able to barbell squat and all that. And it was always those absolutes. So I think that's why I gravitated more towards the educational people. Um, dude, number one, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down today, man. Really appreciate it. Love following your stuff. Do you want to throw out a website or social media handles, anything like
Sure.
that for people to follow?
Yeah, so on my social media, I have in my bio, both on Instagram and Facebook, I have a link tree. So you can go through that link and that'll take you to the other social media, or that'll take you to my website. That'll take you to, I have a bunch of videos on YouTube. My email for any inquiries is in that bio. So anything like that, any services you might want, you can find me at Austin Stout on Facebook. You know, there maybe is another Austin Stout on Facebook, probably somewhere. So just look for the one that has bodybuilding stuff on there. So that's mine.
Right.
And then Austin ST and the number 8 on Instagram. Again, maybe there's another one of those, but mine has the bodybuilding stuff on it. So you'll be able to find it.
Right. I forgot to ask before we go. Love watching your videos of you training in what I call your dungeon, but can you tell me the origins of that?
Yeah, so I owned a gym in from 2016 to 18, I think it was, so about 3 years. And I didn't enjoy it, just full transparency. Like I just really didn't enjoy gym ownership. It's not for me. And you know, I got out of that. I took some of the equipment. I sold off a lot of like the commercial stuff, like the Nautilus equipment, stuff that was actually worth some, you know, worth some money,
Yeah.
recoup a little bit of my investment there.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept a lot of the free weights and dumbbells and racks and, you know, my cables and all that stuff. And the house that I was living in had a big pole barn out the back. Old pole barn, concrete block building, lots of all the windows were broken out and boarded up. It had cracks. I could see daylight through about 20 different places in the building, but I thought, well, this is fine for a gym, you know. So that created the barn gym, the original barn gym, and I added some equipment to it over the years. I added some like, you know, cool unique stuff that I wanted in there. And that I had that from 2018 up until about two or 3 months ago. And then when I moved to this house, there's another pole building here, and it had a big lean-to on it that was built for RVs. So it's about 20-foot tall ceilings, right? You could pull like RVs and cars into it. And so one of my stipulations was I'm going to get the front of this framed in. I'm going to get a garage door on it, and this is going to be the new barn gym at the new house.
Right.
And so everything moved here, you know, a couple months ago. So I have the barn gym 2.0, which is a little bit less dingy than the other one. Still very hardcore.
Yeah.
But I will, you know, I'll forever train probably by myself in this, you know, in the elements. It gets cold, it gets hot. So we get to experience it. I just come from, you know, I come from the hardcore bodybuilding background. That's what my origins are. As much as I am in functional health and gen pop, I'm still very much a hardcore bodybuilder at heart.
Right. Yeah, I love watching you get after it in there, dude. You put on the duct tape shoes and go in there to get after it.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like, I don't always get to train in the kind of gyms that I want to. Like, I want ripped seats, rusty weights. I want to hear the clang. I don't want to see rubber weights and all that. But you know, wherever my location is where I got to work out. But I need some character in my gym, dude. So I get jealous when I see yours. I'm like, man, that's the kind of place I want to train at right there.
Yeah. It's badass, dude. I love it. It's no frills. It's we can, you know, play whatever music, we can yell, we can scream. There's no bathroom, so you just walk around the corner and take a piss outside. You know, it's like it's about as real and raw as you're gonna find anywhere.
Dude, blue collar Ohio, baby. Love it.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.